And I just want to validate the root of this question, which is that meditation, it shouldn't be intimidating, but it often is kind of perceived as intimidating. Like, oh, if I don't reach this perfect state, then I'm not in meditation. Was I meditating? Was I not meditating? Was I successful? Was I not successful? And I think an important way to look at it is to realize that it's a practice. And so it's about practicing as if you are slowly developing that muscle, which is kind of that gray matter of your brain, which meditators tend to have a larger gray matter, which allows them to be more mindful, more present, and practice gratitude. So all of these things are interconnected. So every little thing you do is important. Um, but for meditation, I think that really those guided meditations are really helpful to begin. Um, and to even have a few kind of meditative questions that you go in with, like these investigating sort of questions, can be really helpful. Now, I think that I would be doing a disservice if I didn't mention that, if you are experiencing particularly the effects of PTSD or trauma, anxiety, or or depression, meditation can be a little bit more challenging. And sometimes if you feel negative emotions building strongly, it's natural for them to arise. But if you feel like it's not a positive experience, then certainly you should open your eyes and ground yourself, and that's entirely okay. I think that with the guided meditations, there's a more likelihood for being able to enter those kind of relaxing states, but it doesn't have to happen every time. Usually, for me, my experience is that um, even in, say, like my worst meditation, I always feel better afterwards. So I think that it's always positive, even if you don't reach a state where you're entirely relaxed. So say I have some major kind of crisis happening in my life, it doesn't mean that I would not want to meditate, though the natural stress response is to maybe not meditate when that is something that you would actually would benefit from the most at that time. So this is kind of human psychology. We almost have to kind of look deeper at our actions and what we're inclined to do, and then sometimes challenge that, and practice those things when it's really hard. Like right now, this is one of the hardest times to maybe start yoga or start a guided meditation. But if you kind of make a promise to yourself, if you write it and you put that somewhere that's visible, then maybe you can do that even at this time. So to answer that question, you don't always reach a state where you're completely relaxed. But what happens is, in the third sutra of Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, it's the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. So any steadying is positive. Anything that's steadying those mental or emotional fluctuations is positive. And that is also technically moving us into different brain waves. That's a whole other sort of thing, as is yoga nidra and relaxation and sleep and such. They move you into different kind of brain waves, brain patterns. So away from things that are quite fluctuating into something that's more steady. So yes, how to begin? I think to think about it as a practice and to think that every minute is positive, whether you're practicing for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, just, like anything in life, it's the effort that matters the most, right? Not the outcome. But every minute that you spend doing something positive for yourself, and, any form of meditation is a minute that maybe you don't spend in a state, in a sort of that responsive, anxious, or depressive state, usually because you're doing something proactive against that. So yes, I just want to be very encouraging of all of the efforts and all of the trying of any of these things, because they're all positive. So yes, I hope that I answered your question. And there's no like perfect space, like, oh, I achieved that space of meditation. That's only at like the highest levels. And that doesn't even happen to people that regularly practice all the time. So let go of this idea that like I have to reach this, state where I'm completely at one with the universe or I didn't meditate, because that's actually not how meditation is written in all of these ancient texts. It's like, no, it's the practice of sitting down and choosing to focus on the internal world versus the external world. So if we can eventually balance that ratio, that's really positive for us, and it allows us to be more present and more conscious in our lives, in our kind of wake, and yes, in our activities outside of ourselves. So yeah.